All right, joining us now. I think he's been on every year since we've been on. It feels that way. Certainly every year he's been the voice of Oklahoma softball, which I think is close to a decade. If not, he'll clarify that. He is the radio voice of Oklahoma, of course, hosts a radio show in the morning up in Oklahoma as well, and of course does national radio on Fox Sports Radio. I think those are just some of the many things many hats he wears, ladies and gentlemen. Our good friend Chris Plike joining us here on In the Circle D1 Softball, powered by 643. How many seasons is this for you now?
11. It's my 11th season.
Has it flown by like that fast? Is it seeming fast?
It's kind of funny. I think about how it seems like it really hasn't, and you're like immersed in it. And then I realize that like Kaylee, like I did a game this weekend with Nicole May. We had Nicole May do a game with us, and she's been gone for 2 years on the roster, and in my mind, she was just there last year. Fale Aviu, Fale Steele now. Her and her husband have an awesome baby. They're a great family. And, Fale's on the staff again this year as an assistant. And we'll reminisce a lot about 2016 because her first year was my first year, and it was JT's first year as the hitting coach. It was Jackie's first year as director of ops, and now she's the chief of staff. So whenever I reminisce with Fale, I'm like, that has kind of flown by, hasn't it? It's crazy whenever you see life happen. I was like thinking about watching Amanda Scarborough, whenever I first started getting into softball, and now she's one of the, biggest voices in the sport. And, I see other players, the coaches now that I covered as players, and it's just, yeah, it's absolutely flown by when you look at it from that perspective.
I mean, for me, I remember having you on after the OU Texas series, Grace Lyons' freshman year, because I remember you told me, watch out for this freshman, Grace Lyons. She really impressed me in Austin. That was her freshman year. She's been a while.
Yeah, she was. And it's kind of funny because, the shortstop position, it's so I think my favorite joke was one that Sid Romero, who's the Oregon hitting coach, tells about 2016 whenever she started at Oklahoma her freshman year. Coach said, all right, everyone, get out to your positions, and everyone ran a shortstop. So you bring up Grace Lyons, that shortstop position, there's so many greats that go through, and it's another mindset of how quickly it's flown by when you're like, well, Kelsey Arnold, you're like, oh my gosh, that was 10 years ago when she was the shortstop at Oklahoma. So yeah, man, it's been a fun run. It's a really good program, and it's been a really kind of life-changing experience for me.
It's been incredible, and many of these years we've had you on, it's usually around Red River. And that's the first question I want to ask you about this matchup, which I think has become the premier matchup in college softball, which is it's also a marquee matchup in the other sports since then. But just talk about the growth of this matchup since you kind of started covering it. They've played for the national championship twice now in the last handful of years. This has become the national TV series, if you will. ESPN's going to put it in prime time and etc. Just talk about the growth of this matchup, really, since you started covering it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, again, my first year was 2016, and Texas wasn't very good. They didn't have a program the first handful of years whenever I started that was on par with Oklahoma. And it didn't matter. Whenever Oklahoma and Texas would play, it was a battle. It would come down, I think, 16, Aaron Miller had a walk-off home run. They were down, I want to say, in both 18 and 19 and had to rally to win. So even, when Texas wasn't very good, whenever it came to this series, it was a battle. And then, Mike White takes over. He brings a whole new attitude. He's challenged that administration and the fans and that program to support softball. It's like, hey, you want to be good at softball, you need to pony up. You need to really put some resources behind it. And I think you've seen that. I think you've seen, Texas elevate its program and its level of play. I mean, hell, they won a national championship, for goodness sake. So it's been a cool evolution for me because I wasn't around for the Cat Osterman era. I didn't get to see that. I saw Texas whenever they were struggling and whenever they made a coaching change, and to see it ramp back up and to see that the passion for it it's been really cool. And it has, it's brought the series to a whole nother level now. There's, Mike White has some sort of relationship, it seems, with the OU fan base. They don't like him too much. I don't think he likes them. but it's also, it's just, it's good softball, man. It's fun to watch the best of the best go at it. And that's what I'm excited about, to be in Austin this weekend and see a really good crowd and see really good softball players square off and on the biggest stage.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like the fact, by the way, that there is some dislike there. You mentioned the Mike White and the fan base.
Sure.
That's what it's all about. You and I cover other sports, pros. That's kind of what it's supposed to be to some extent, as long as it doesn't get too crazy about it. But that's kind
Yeah.
of the fun of the rivalry.
Yeah, I'll say this much. It's been an interesting, you talk about, I made a transition recently in my life where I went from doing a 9 to noon show, which is, relatively early, a mid-morning show, to doing the morning show. Now I'm on every day from 6 to 9 a.m., which means the alarm clock goes off every day around, 4:30. And I bring all that up because the show that I replaced was a big baseball show. And it's great. So I've tried to carry that on, but now we're bringing a whole nother level of softball. And it's been interesting to watch, like, the listeners that have been there for a while, get the softball migration of takes and topics. And even the baseball people that didn't really care about or know much or talk much about softball, even they don't like Mike White. They don't know why. They just know that the rest of the fans don't. I mean, it's kind of like everyone bashes Nickelback, and all they did was drop bangers. People bash Mike White, and all he does is win. And so it's kind of hard to hate on that, but it really truly it brings out the best in both programs. It might bring out the worst in the fan bases, but you're right. That's what college sports is all about.
No question about that. I like the segue. You mentioned you host the morning show, so it's a good segue to ask you this question. What is the fan base? What does the Sooner fans think of this Oklahoma team in 2026?
I think there's this incredible optimism with the offense and what is a record-setting pace. I mean, you think about 144 home runs through, what do you have, 40, 41 games? I don't have all my notes
Yeah,
right here.
41 games, yeah.
41 games, yeah. And you think about Kendall Wells already matching the home run freshman record in 30 games, or in 40 games with 30 home runs. I mean, it's pretty incredible what the offense is doing defensively. Now, there's been a couple of games, like Alana Agbayani had 2 errors in a game this past week against Kentucky, but came out flawlessly, the rest of the way, as did Gabby Garcia up the middle. And I bring up those in particular to say that defense is as strong as ever. If there was ever a concern about where they were defensively in the outfield, you go a year without Jada Coleman and you add in like Jada 2.0, only a natural outfielder, in Kai Minor and what the freshman has become. So defensively, Kendall Wells, this is not a knock on Bella Emmerling at all, but Kendall Wells is as solid of a defensive catcher as Oklahoma's had as a freshman since Kinsey. They're very similar in that and what they do defensively behind the plate. So offense, defense, everyone feels real good. The pitching was a concern and is a concern, I think, among the fan base. But I've mentioned this a lot. I think there's a lot of grace to be had for that pitching because you're without your coach, for the first, quarter, almost half of the season. And that whole room is stabilized by Carly Keeney, who came in and did a great job. But there's a lot of development that was lost, unfortunately, and that it's just the reality of it. And now you get Jen Rocha back, and that development kicks back in for young pitchers like Berkeley Zakay, who made her SEC debut this past weekend. And you see Sydney Burzon getting a little bit more comfortable. And now you have that pitching wisdom, that energy, that vibe, that aura that Jen Rocha brings. And I think you've seen over the last few weeks that's really developed into a strength for Oklahoma. And I didn't even mention Audrey and Miley. So Audrey Lowry and Miley Wachenio. So I think fans are feeling really good. I feel like ever since Jordy left, even though they won a national championship with Kelly Maxwell, there were questions about pitching during that season. And Kelly really found it after the Oklahoma State series, and Nicole May was consistent for him. Sam Landry was awesome last year, but it just wasn't enough. So I feel like that most of the concern is around the pitching, but I think that now you've started to see it really find another level. So I think that concern is now you see fans being mad that they're not ranked number one. So that's a good sign, Eric, whenever you reach that point where you're another team jumped you. So that's a good sign.
Back to normal. There you go. I
Yeah.
like that a lot. You mentioned Jen Rocha's return. I thought that I had Colton Soley on in the last episode from the Oklahoma talk about Jen Rocha's return. He wrote a feature about her return, and what was it like? Because that had to be unique. Not having her around had to be a little weird. You mentioned Carly Keeney taking over, but now she's back. What has that been like for the program with all that? You mentioned that is not something that that there's no playbook to how to handle that situation. Thankfully, the best news is she's healthy, cancer free. That's the best news, number one. But number two, I mean, I said this on the podcast. It to me, with her back in the mold, Oklahoma can win the national championship. That's how highly I think of her as a pitching coach.
Yeah, and listen, I'll just be honest with you, Eric, and I don't think my objectivity goes out the window whenever I start talking about this staff. And I'll be honest with you, if that is something that affects the way that you want to look at my analysis, I'll completely understand it, and you're right. But she is special, man. Jen Rocha is really special, and not just in her personality and who she is, and her faith and her family, and her husband, Paul. By the way, you need to get Paul on sometime. Paul Rocha, I know you're probably watching this. Eric, he is an ace bracketologist. So I'm just telling you right now, he is he's taught me a lot about it, and learning from you. So and then Eliana mentioned their daughter. Her parents and her sister have been such big supporters of the radio broadcast, and they're a part of the fun. So it's a long way to say that when you bring up that point that, hey man, I kind of look at them as a favorite now because of the addition of her. I've got a buddy that doesn't care about assistant coaches and coordinators in football. He's like, that's the biggest waste ever. If you can play, you can play. It's our biggest fight, right? And it's just there's such a different level of development that comes whenever you have someone like Jen Rocha. There's such a different level of understanding pitch flow and pitch count, and what pitch to throw and what count, and kind of understanding a different perspective on the scouting reports, and pitching into certain things, strengths and weaknesses, from the strengths of the pitcher to the weakness of the batter. I'm telling everyone things they already know, but just she's so special in that level. So I can't even begin to put into words what a difference it's made. Now, granted, it's funny I say that they lost the game. Since she returned, they lost that second game of the series to LSU. But I think that was good for everyone involved. They didn't lose that game on Friday, or that game on Saturday, because of their pitching. They had pitched well enough to win the game. Their offense just didn't get going until it was too late. So with that in mind, I've been really in awe of seeing her strength, stamina, and just her wisdom that's back. It makes all the difference in the world for the staff. And you start seeing names like Berkeley Zakay, where, if you cover high school recruiting, man, this was one of the top arms in the country whenever she came out. So all that to be said, I'm really glad she's back, man. It soothes my soul. I hope it does for everyone in softball too.
Listen, no, I think she's genuinely one of the most liked people in the sport. Like, I really do. Like, I think there was so much joy when they saw the video of her announcing that she's cancer free and returning, because I think a lot of people were worried about whether she would come back at all, and her well being. So I tend to agree. And listen, I've covered her since her days here in Florida. So, I mean, to me, she's in the Mount Rushmore of pitch calling and developing pitchers, and that's why I said without her, I didn't think Oklahoma had a shot to win it all or be a contender. But now with her back in the fold, I do think they could do that, and certainly, they have this historic offense, which I do need to ask you about. You've seen this great offenses. I think we both have talked about in the past that 21 offense is probably the standard, arguably, when you look at the numbers they put up in 2021. How is this team doing what they're doing? 144 home runs. They're on pace to shatter a lot of your program records, which is wild. How?
I 2 years ago, we were OU, and I think a lot of schools do it. They'll have a camp that'll be around, and they'll have future members of the team recruits. And again, everyone has in their different camps that they have, and it's kind of a futures camp. And they had this futures camp that was at Love's Field. And I was watching this group of freshmen take batting practice. And I never seen anyone hit the ball harder or farther. When Kendall Wells stepped to the plate, and by the way, I say that, and Oklahoma has a commit next year named Goose Hutchins, who, when I watched her do the same thing, Eric, I think she hit the ball farther and harder. So maybe there's another level to come. And listen, we could pull back, and I think there's a really fun off-season conversation to be had about, is it the focus on hitting and the hundreds of thousands of dollars in hitting lessons that have taken place over the last, 15 years that have elevated that part of the game? Is it the technology? Is it the having the catapults and understanding where you need to focus on your breathing and your training? Is it the bat technology, right? I think there's a great debate because, Oklahoma's going to smash the single season home run record, but so is UCLA, based on, and Florida was on a trend for it earlier. So I think there's a fun softball conversation to be had at some point about, all right, what Oklahoma's doing is pretty wild, but we're seeing it up across the board. With that said, there is this different level whenever the ball comes off their bats. I've never seen anything like it. And I say they because it's not just Kendall Wells, it's Kai Minor, it's Lexi McDaniel, it's Alyssa Parker. These are four true freshmen that are playing a major, major role in a team that returned 8 of its 9 starters. And, all 4 of those could start on any day at the same time, which is just wild to me. So I I had a feeling that this had a chance to be a really special group from the first time I ever saw them hit. I mean, I still go back to it, and you don't want to get too carried away with BP, but I remember Kendall Wells hit a ball, and we have this great fight amongst the Sooner Nation, Eric, because you've been to Love's Field. The scoreboard is the state of Oklahoma, okay? And it's kind of an optical illusion because if you're standing at home plate, you're like, someone's gonna hit that scoreboard. But if you walk out behind it, you're like, ain't nobody ever hitting the scoreboard because it would be the longest home run ever. And I remember watching Kendall Wells, who at that point would probably be what, a junior, senior in high school, whatever, taking batting practice. And she hit one that off the bat, I was like, that's gonna hit the scoreboard. It's just that's how good they were. And this was 2 years ago. So I don't have an answer for you except to say it's just this is a different level of player that seems to be coming in out of the high school and AAU ranks. And Oklahoma's pretty blessed to have a quad of them that are playing a major part in what they're doing right now.
I want to stay on Kendall Wells. She was on our D1 softball podcast with Jenna
It was
Becerra.
great. It was
Oh,
great.
I was blown away, Chris, watching that interview. I even texted Jenna, like, man, her personality was off the charts. She could be a superstar there, just with her personality alone. I've heard the comparisons to her and Jocelyn, which is it too early for that, or are we, or what do we make of her potential here?
Yeah, here's the thing. It's kind of funny. Kendall was around a lot last year because she traveled. She came to all the game. I got to know her dad, and she was at the SEC championship game. And I feel like I've watched her. She was on my radio station, and she was on another show. She wasn't even on my show. And again, I'm not bitter or anything, Kendall. That's fine. But it's wild for me to see this high school kid from last year and having watched her hit and now watching her in an Oklahoma uniform and realizing just how comfortable she is and who she is and what she's doing. She's goofy as all get out. She's already established herself as a leader. She appears to, right? I'm not around her 24/7, but she appears to love the game. And I think she's one of those players in the future that's going to have a C on her chest. I think she's going to be a captain. Every single time I listen to her, I learn something new about her, whether it's something with her sister and her swimming career at Georgia Southern or her parents. And, it's just, she is, the comparisons are hard for me because, Lauren Chamberlain is one of my favorite people of all time. Jocelyn Allo is one of my favorite players of all time. And, this is somebody who's got a chance to break all their records. And, it's because they set that foundation that she's where she is. But if Oklahoma continues to amass the talent they're amassing when it comes to that lineup, she's helped because you can't pitch around her. You're going to pitch around Kendall Wells. Oh, great. There's the All-American Ella Parker or Cassidy Pickering waiting, or, Gabby Garcia, who has 16 home runs this year. It's just this lineup allows her, I think, to be as free of a swinger as she wants to be. She'll have a struggle. She had a struggle. She really was she was in a tough spot at Ole Miss. You know, she had a really rough weekend. I have my scorebook here in front of me. She had a rough weekend against Ole Miss, but you know, she bounces back and still hits 2 home runs that weekend somehow. So she's really something else, man.
Just shows she was human. That's all. That's
Yeah.
just show. I mean, my co-host Victor right now believes he should be the front runner for National Player of the Year as a freshman, which is wild to think about.
You know, I'm a homer. So what I'm going to say is probably going to be met with that. Oh, well, you're an Oklahoma guy, and you're right. But her, you know, did to UCLA, Woolery and Grant have been outstanding. I think that now he's just right back there in the mix. You know, he Jordy Fromm, man, what a stud. And I think that for me personally, I dig watching the Jordy story, Eric, because she's as much as I wish she would have stayed at Oklahoma all 4 years and five, I guess now with the knee injury, but probably would have won another ring if Jordy would have stayed around, if we're just being honest about it last year. I just can't say enough about how cool it is what Jordy has done for Nebraska softball. Man, when she left Oklahoma, that's what she wanted to do. And it gets me. Like I listen to Nate Rohr call those games and I hear when Jordy Fromm is coming in or at the plate. And she wanted to build something at Nebraska and she did. So I might be a little bit more, if we're talking about player of the year, I think there's a little bit more of me that kind of looks at it like the Heisman like I voted for Manti Te'o because I love this story about how, he was fighting and wanting to pay homage to his passed away girlfriend who ended up not even being a real person. So I can be a sucker for the storyline, Eric. I can fall for it. But I think with what Jordy's done, she deserves to be in that conversation.
Sure, absolutely.
But it is hard, man. It's hard to look at 30 home runs in 40 games, a team that's sitting at number 4 right now, number 3 right now in the national rankings, number 2, depending on which rankings you look at. If it's you guys, if it's NFCA, USA Today, whatever it is, it's just it's going to be hard to ignore if she stays on this pace because, bro, what's the ceiling? If you're at 30 after 40 games, like what are we talking about with the total number of home runs that she could hit this year? So she's definitely. Victor would have my support in that, but there's a lot of really, really good young talent in this sport right now.
Well, right now she's the D1 Softball National Player of the Week that came out on Tuesday.
There you
go. So we'll just settle for that for now. We'll go step by step. This might sound sacrilegious, so tell me if I'm being way off base. Can this current freshman class, which was ranked number 1 by a lot of the publications that follow recruiting, can they end up being the best freshman class ever that this program's had? I know that sounds insane. And when you have a freshman class that won 4 national titles, I understand that sounds insane. But I've been blown away by the freshmen that you've alluded to and the immediate impact they've done here, Chris. It's remarkable.
Listen, there is a chance TRA's watching this right now. So no, there's no chance this freshman class is going to be better than the freshman class that came in 2021 and won 4 straight national championships. But are the freshmen that were freshmen in 2021, right? 21, 22, 20, yeah, in 21 they came in. I think though this freshman class is going to rewrite the record book. I think Kai Minor is going to set the steals and triples record, at least, and I'm just talking about Oklahoma in Oklahoma softball history. I think if Berkeley's the K, is able to find that consistency, she is going to be the ace of this staff next year. And that's how good she is. Alyssa Parker is a two-way player that had to maybe, I don't want to say tap out a little bit on the defense and hitting side of things because they really felt like they needed her to develop more as a pitcher. But she came in and played third base this weekend. Sid Barker is trying to get things going at the plate, and Parker came in and played third and did really well. And so, maybe that's in the future for her. Lexi McDaniel might end up being their everyday first baseman when all is said and done. And you've talked to Kendall Wells. So, I think they're going to rewrite the Oklahoma record book. Now let's see if they can keep it together. And it's going to be hard to win 4 straight national titles. But it's a really impressive group, man. And it's not just Oklahoma right now. This group is really good. But you look across this sport right now, and it's kind of like college basketball, right? Kind of like college basketball right now. We're living in a time when we're seeing arguably the best collection of freshman talent that we've seen in this sport in a really long time.
Yeah, the difference is basketball. They're probably all going to the NBA draft after 1 year. At least we'll get to stick. Softball gets to stick around for 4 years. So
That's true.
that's the big positive there. What's
Good
what?
point.
It's right. That's the beauty of it. What's wild about this? We've spent all this time talking about the team, and we have not brought up, except briefly, you mentioned her, Ella Parker and Cassidy Pickering. Who a year ago at this time we're talking about, hey, they're the faces of the program, and it's not like they're having bad years. They're having maybe their best years of their
Yeah,
careers, and yet it's kind of under the radar. Talk
I don't
about
think
those two.
yeah, I don't think they mind it.
Yeah.
I don't think they mind it at all. I think that, you know, um, Cassidy Pickering, I'll say this, will probably go down as my favorite Oklahoma softball player of all time, just because she couldn't care less about me. And I say that with peace and love, but she couldn't care less about me or the media or the highlights or she just loves ball. And it's been really cool to watch from afar because I'm kind of scared of her. I don't think she likes me too much, Eric. So I watch from afar. And to see her personality come out and to see how I think she's enjoyed this class. Her and Kendall Wells seem to have a great relationship. And I think some of her personality is coming out a little bit more. And she's funny and she's charismatic more than what you might think just watching this team play. I think she doesn't mind operating in the shadows a little bit. And Ella Parker is just smooth. And I don't think she's somebody that's out, wanting more time on camera or wanting more time in interviews. So it's funny that you say that because I was just having that conversation with someone the other day because there is a shock that Oklahoma doesn't have a captain. Patty Gasso, at least since my first year in 2016 and throughout the last now 10 seasons, they had a captain, including Nelly, who was a freshman captain last year. And she just decided, I'm going to do it by committee. And I think that kind of fits the personality of this team a little bit, right? At least Nelly was a redshirt freshman last year, but, Kendall Wells would be in line to be captain-esque, but it's kind of hard to put that responsibility on a true freshman. So that's a long way of answering a very good question to say, yeah, Ella and Cassidy just broke out of her little mini slump that she was having. And to see the way that they just have really embraced the elder statesman mindset, but also in that same vein, both taking on new roles. Pickering more of a DP now, and Ella Parker, your everyday right fielder. I think it's been kind of cool to see the re-imaging of both of those players, at least in what their roles are defensively, and to see how they've really embraced it. Yeah, they're having a great season.
They really are. You mentioned obviously Nelly. Obviously, that was the unfortunate loss there for the season due to injury. What's your thoughts on them moving forward without her? Is that a
Yeah.
concern, especially on the defense in the infield?
First of all, in Nelly, it's so heartbreaking because she had not played in the first couple of games of the series where she got hurt because she was dealing with a shoulder. And then I think it was the second half inning in the field, she had one plate appearance, got a base hit. And then in that second inning, she had the little collision with Kendall Wells and it tore ACL. It was, I think, the first ball that was hit, kind of in her direction, which is crazy to think about after she had missed a couple of games. She's still around. It's really cool to see. She's still down there leading the cheers, leading the charge in the dugout. She's a great personality. But yeah, Nelly proved to be a great glove and a good stick. And yeah, Sydney Barker has been really good defensively, but Sid struggled at the plate a little bit. You've seen Alyssa Parker play some over at third. Sid's their everyday third baseman. She's there. She's going to play third. Sid Barker is. But I think even she would tell I've got to find ways to get the bat going, and I like what she's done. She's Eric. I think she's a future captain, Sid Barker. I'm not just saying that because she comes on my show every week, but like she has the mindset of a captain. She is a leader, and I really think she's going to be so good. But now, she's drawing walks. She's getting hit by pitches, whatever it takes to get going. I remember Kinsey Hansen, her sophomore, maybe her junior year, really had just a rough season at the plate. And, it finally got going, I think, in the champ series. But these things happen. It's diamond sports. Slumps happen. But to see what she's doing to not let that affect anything else in Sid Barker's game is really cool to see. With that in mind, I think the wild card at third might be Abby Dayton. Patty held open tryouts at third base whenever Nelly got hurt, and she said we had about 6 players that lined up over there, and Abby Dayton really impressed her. Abby came in the fifth inning. Well, we didn't play seven this weekend, but came in like the fifth inning this week and played third against Kentucky, and has done it before. It looks pretty good over there. So yeah, it hurts. It hurts not having Nelly, but Sid Barker's really been good defensively over there. Now, if they get something going with that, if it's the 7 or 8 spot in the lineup, they really have a chance to do something special in May and into June.
Give me the player that's under the radar, that doesn't get talked about nationally, that won't get brought up that much, maybe even this weekend on the ESPN national telecast. And that's not throwing shade. It's just there's only so much time on a broadcast that you could talk about people, right? But who is the player, Chris? And every Oklahoma in your national championships, you always had these players, the under the radar players that are the key, that could be the key in winning the national championship.
Kai Minor. And it's funny because when you talk freshman, you talk Kendall Wells. Um, people don't talk about Kai Minor. And I think every single time I'm trying to think, we had Michelle Smith was in Baton Rouge. Amanda was here. I was just trying to think of all the different ESPN analysts that have seen Oklahoma. I think if you were to ask them, that would probably be their answer too, because you hear about her and you see her stats, and maybe you've watched a few highlights, but when you watch her play in person, it's like, oh, it's a true triple threat. And when spring ball, when fall ball, get football confused, when fall ball took place, she was kind of a mixture of the buzz, but also a concern, right? There was this, it was either someone telling you, dude, Kai Minor is going to be a rock star, man. Kai Minor is going to need a year or two. There wasn't like at least an in between. And I remember watching her in fall ball and thinking, whoever says she's struggling is crazy. She's going to start center field in day one. And I mean, I remember I saw somebody that had projected the season lineup and they had put a different player in center field. And I just reached out and I'm like, I'd put Kyle Minor out there if I were you. And they listened. So they hopefully, I think they look smart, but she's so comfortable, man. She's so smooth. And I think everything she does, look, she reminds me so much of Jada, not just because she's a center fielder and she hits from the left-handed side of the plate, but it's just her mannerism. She's not as fiery, still a little bit more. She's a freshman and laid back. But if you're asking me who the under the radar player is, yeah, it's Kai Minor. I don't think she's going to be under the radar for much longer. I think she's got a chance to have a really big weekend in Austin.
Two more things before I let you go. As you look ahead to this Texas series, I know you're starting your prep and all that. What jumps out to you about this matchup, this series with Texas, and what are some things you're kind of gonna write down as some keys to this series?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was hoping all the good players had graduated from Texas. They haven't. Reese Atwood is still there, and Tegan Cavan is still there. They get back one of their best defensive infielders. So I mean, it's just they're still good. And what stands out to me is just trying to follow. I'm going to hopefully talk to Andrew this week, and maybe some Texas fans can get in the mentions and help me out on this because I don't get to watch every game. But it's been weird to kind of follow the roller coaster with the pitching a bit. There's games where I'll see a 3-1 or a 2-zip, and then I'll look up and it's 12-11 or 7-5, and you're like, how is that happening with Tegan Cavan or Sit Lally in the circle or whomever else they're turning to? So I was not surprised. Maybe a little disappointed by how good they were. I work with a guy named Gabe Eichert. Gabe is our sideline analyst in the football broadcast, and we do TV shows together, and he's got his own podcast. And his favorite thing when he watches an opposing team's tape is something his old coach would tell him. And Gabe will always say, well, they're a lot better than I want them to be. And that's kind of how I feel when I watch Texas. Plus you add into the mix, Eric, that it's OU Texas. All right. And Texas got its revenge in the World Series last year. They knocked Oklahoma down to the losers bracket, and the Sooners weren't able to get past Nyjah Kennedy, right? Oklahoma, though, had swept them, nearly run ruled them during the regular season in the series clinching game. So I boy, these two teams, they know each other so well. And, for as much as Texas we thought they had lost, they're still really, really strong. So I've been really impressed with how they have persevered through what has been a target on your back because you're the defending champs. Now, it's a cool place to play. But I mean, is air horn guy still there, Eric? Do you know? They still have the dude that's got the horn blasting behind the left field wall. How's that legal?
Listen, I'm writing this down because Andrew Haynes is going to be on the same podcast. He'll be right after this interview. And I'm going to ask him these specific questions just for you. Especially the horn part. The horn part. Trust me, the pitching thing I was already going to ask him about. I think that's but the horn thing I will ask. That's a good question.
What have you put together on the pitching? Like what is it?
Yeah.
Do you have an answer of what you think's been going on at Texas to where it's been so roller coaster?
Just a lot of strike zone-ish. The strike, kind of walks, and which is a whole. I know everybody's starting to jump on your bandwagon, Chris. You've talked about it for years about the umpires in the strike zone, and I think more people are starting to follow in your kind of thing, man.
Listen, there's a certain way to go. Study my guy Bubba Ewald. Study Troy Kuykendall. They do a good job. They got good zones. Those are my guys. But yeah, it's been a weird year because I don't know if we're ever going to get to the the spot in college baseball or college softball where you get the automated strikes. I don't know if you're ever going to get there. But man, even looking at some of the data, it's wild. Just a quick story, and I know you got to get. But we had a series early in the year, and I was killing the umpire. Eric. It was the worst strike zone I'd ever seen in my life. And I was losing my mind. And so we got done and I would go down and I would always ask, because I feel like if I'm like, hey, I was killing the umpire, they'd be like, oh yeah, it was a bad zone. So I asked Carly Keeney, I'm like, what do you think? She goes, oh, I thought the zone was really good. And I was like, oh no, it was just, so sometimes maybe whenever you look at the true data and the numbers, they're a little bit better than they seem. But I feel like we're in a wildly inconsistent world when it comes to strike zone.
That's a very good description of it. Trust me, I am with you 100% on that one, without question. I'll let you go on this. My last question. What do you think is the biggest question that either you might have or maybe Coach Gasso has long-term, beyond just this weekend, to get to the ultimate prize? What's the biggest question that you all still have, or maybe you think Coach Gasso has in her mind about this team and their goals later in the year?
How do they handle the days when they don't have it? I thought that's what made the 2024, 23, 22, 21 class great, is the days that you were tired or it's diamond sports. You just don't have it. And the days when they didn't have it, they handled it pretty well and they still won a lot of games. Now, the struggle came in 24. They lost a lot more regular season games, didn't win the Big 12 championship, but they still were at their best when they needed to be, right? Almost as if they hit the postseason and hit a switch. Now, this team's not going to be able to do that. I think the sport is loaded at the top right now with talented teams. But how are they going to handle those days when it's just when someone's shoving on you, whenever your offense isn't what it's doing, or you make a mistake? How on those days where you're tired, how do they handle it? And I think that is something they're learning. And that was been a pretty brutal grind for him travel-wise, as it has for everybody. But, that schedule they had at Palm Springs was rough. You were playing some late-night games. You were turning around and playing early the next day. And I think they learned a lot they lost. They lost to Cal State Fullerton out there. But I think they learned a lot about themselves. And I think those are lessons that will help them as they go on. But, we could pigeonhole things. How does Audrey or Miley develop as the ace of this staff? Ken Berkeley's a KBU player. Well, the lack of like a defensive dude at first base end up hurting them. They kind of hurt him in the outfield last year, where they didn't have the best defensive outfield that they've had in years past. They've upgraded that. But, now what happens if a play needs to be made at first? Bella Emmerling, Lexi McDaniel have been over there. We've even seen Kendall Wells play some first. Pickering had played a little first, but I think that's going to be a couple of the real interesting questions to follow for OU this year.
That is the radio voice of Oklahoma softball, Chris Pike, morning host over at Fox Sports Radio as far as the morning talk show. Tell the audience where they can find you.
Oh, I'm on the ref. I wore my shirt tonight, so you
Nice
can.
shirt. I like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly. But no, I just go at Plank Show. I tweet about softball way too much. I tweet about the Raiders way too much, but that's where you can find me. And kref.com. We talk a lot of softball. We guarantee every Monday morning at 7 a.m. we spend 30 minutes recapping the weekend that was and a lot of good interaction. So kref.com, man, check it out. And Eric, I'm grateful to be on the show. I can't wait to get to Austin this weekend, and I can't wait to see you whenever you get down here in Oklahoma City for the Big 12.
Should be a lot of fun. I know you got a fellow Raider fan coming to visit in a couple of weeks. That'll also be a storyline there when Arkansas comes in.
I'm going to try to get him to go to the spring game with me so I can distract him from getting focused on his hitters.
There.
I'm inviting DJ to DJ. This is the personal invitation for you to come down and work the sidelines with me during the OU Arkansas game. Just anything, to serve as a little distraction before OU and Arkansas that night.
I love that. That'd be pretty cool. If not, I'll take the gig. I'll take the gig. It's a pretty good gig there. Chris, enjoy it. Hey man, have a fun one. This is always great. Always OU Texas, always a blast. I'm looking forward to listening to you. Always listen as much as possible. Thanks for always coming on and being awesome with us on the show.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. I might need security. I'm in the crowd this weekend. So, Texas fan, let's go. It's going to be fun. I can't wait.